So if 2v8 was actually put into the game, how would it work? If you're not familiar with 2v8, somehow within the DVD community, this popular idea of a 2v8 is 2 killers versus 2 survivors with 10 gens. Before I continue, I just want to say that I think this is extremely unlikely. I would love for it to come into the game, but it's very unlikely just due to balances, of course. First off, 2 different killers, it can't happen at all. I'm just telling you that right now. It's just too many scenarios that can happen with 2 different killers where it could just be downright impossible to counter as a survivor, or it would just be too much for the game. For example, like Plague and the Pig. How would that work where you're infected and you have to go to the pool of devotion and you also have to get the trap off your head? So if a 2v8 was to actually happen, I think it could be 2 of the same killers. Hear me out. The reason why it will be 2 of the same killers is because it will be less of an issue mechanic wise, because that way you don't have to worry about different scenarios in which 2 different killers can apply pressure on the survivors. If it's 2 of the same killers, however, it will be the same like facing that one killer, but it's just double. Both the killers will have to have the same add-ons, so they will share their add-ons. This is because it could be scenarios where if the killers were to mix up their add-ons, it could just be a huge balance issue towards the survivors part, and I could just see that being absolutely insane. Having 4 different add-ons, if it's just 2 of the same killers to be exact, sharing those same add-ons, I don't think it'll be much of an issue mechanic or balance wise. Plus 2 killers have the 2 of the same killers have the same tear radius, so you don't have to worry about 2 different killers mixing their tear radius music and the survivors being confused. If it's just both killers approaching the group of survivors or one killer approaching the group of survivors, they won't have to get confused with that tear radius music because, well, it's the same killer. Both killers will share perks as well, because having 8 different perks would be crazy. It would just be, I could just see it being a lot like too much slowdown in the game. If those 2 killers were to have like 8 gen perks or something crazy like that, they could just pull off something absolutely evil if they were to have 8 different perks in the game. So say for example, if a Ghostface had Pop Goes the Weasel, right, which they both do have Pop Goes the Weasel because, well, they're sharing their perks. If one Ghostface hooks a survivor then kicks a gen, for the other Ghostface, that Pop Goes the Weasel will activate once that survivor gets hooked as well. In other words, if one Ghostface already uses Pop Goes the Weasel, it won't activate for the other Ghostface. It won't work for the other Ghostface because the first Ghostface already used Pop Goes the Weasel. Once that one Ghostface hooked that survivor, I could just see a whole bunch of strategies coming into play too with the sharing of the perks that could result in a very immersive experience in co-op dealing with the killers. So I think it will be cool. It will have to be a brand new map set for the mode or extended versions of those existing maps, original maps to be specific, because licensed maps, well, you can't, I guess the devs can be creative and extend the licensed maps, but I feel like that would be complicated, so I guess they could just go with the original maps. But yeah, they will have to extend those maps and make those maps bigger because, well, it's 10 gens that the survivors have to complete, so you have to make the map bigger in order to fit all those generators into that one map. And plus it will be 8 survivors, so they need that space, I guess. If both killers camp a survivor on the hook, one of them is transferred all the way to the opposite side of the map, kind of like Pyramid Head pitting survivors in the cage. I always thought of this scenario if just 2 killers were to just camp one survivor for no reason, so one of those killers would just be transferred all the way to the opposite side of the map if 2 of them were to camp. One killer can camp while the other killer does the work, but that would just result in a strategy where it's like a 50-50 chance because, well, the killer could still lose the game. It's not impossible to not win from that because, well, it's more survivors and the survivors will crank out those gens. So that's a strategy, I guess, but it's not a good strategy to do if the mode was actually in the game. But 2 killers camping, making it very hard for the survivors to get the save, I think that would be an issue, so I think this would be a right call. Lastly, whenever a chase is activated for one killer, that survivor being chased is completely immune to the second killer. After chase ends, that immunity lingers for 10 seconds for that survivor only. I always thought of scenarios where 2 killers would be chasing one survivor and the survivor could kind of dead zone themselves by accident or run into a dead zone, and the 2 killers could just get it easy down. So to make things a bit fair, I always thought of the idea where if one killer is chasing one survivor, the second killer can't affect that survivor, just to be fair, because, well, that won't be fair. That will result in nearly an insta down, kind of like Knight. So you know how Knight of course uses power, gets a guard on the survivor. You know how the survivors could run through the Knight? It'll be kind of like that, except that second killer cannot hit the survivor at all. The survivor is completely immune to that second killer, and after that chase ends, it lingers, that immunity lingers for 10 seconds, so they're good for 10 seconds from that second killer, not the first killer. And that's my quick pitch for a 2v8. I do want to say I think this is extremely unlikely regardless of my pitch or anything like that. This is just for fun, I guess, but I would love to definitely see it. I always thought of just having an Alien versus Predator chapter or an Alien and Predator chapter where the devs actually introduced the mode 2v8 where you can play as Alien and Predator, but of course the two different killers thing I always had in mind. It would just be too many scenarios where both two different killers' powers could really be too powerful for that one match. So I just find that really unlikely, but it is a mode that I would love to see nonetheless. So I know King brought up a good point of having this 2v8 put into custom match where you don't actually have to balance anything, so you can use two different killers if you really wanted to. But I always thought of the fact where if you're a loner like myself and you don't have friends to invite to games, then that will kind of make that mode pointless, because if it's a custom match you have to invite people to games. It has to be another 9 people in your match to be exact, so you will have to invite 9 people to that custom match, which I think will be just too much. Like, that's damn near a whole party, bro. But anyways, let me know what you guys think down below about the quick pitch of 2v8 possibly happening. I don't think it will happen, it's very unlikely. I mean, I hope it will as an event or something, maybe not something permanently for the game, but I would just love to see 2 Ghostfaces or Legion or Frank and Susie or Frank and Julie running around together, stabbing together. I think it would be really cool to see. Love y'all, take care, I'm gonna see you on the next one, and peace.